Welcome to episode 2 of the Fabric of Ireland podcast. Finally, we're back in the studio recording. It's been a while, but I'm so glad to be back here. And today I'm solo. I'm excited to launch this segment of the podcast, which I will call The Journey to Ireland. So this is a safe space where I want to share personal reflections and just the different encounters I've had in the journey to being here and finally, ultimately establishing the Fabric of Ireland podcast. So, yeah, it's great to be back. And actually, before I continue, I just want to say thank you to the Fabric of Ireland community on Instagram, my networks, and all the support that I've gotten for the first episode of the Fabric of Ireland podcast. I appreciate everyone who's reached out and just engaged with the content. So I encourage you to watch episode 1 if you haven't already. And I look forward to more exciting episodes as well. So that brings me to today's episode where I just want to have a chat with you guys and speak on my own journey to Ireland and what ultimately led me to establishing the podcast and just some of the questions and experiences that I've had along the way. So definitely one of the questions that comes up a lot, everyone's like, why Ireland? Why did you pick Ireland as a place to relocate to or to set up your base or your home, I suppose? And I think it happened pretty organically for me. It was pretty simple. A work opportunity came up. I was available. It's just one of those situations where it's like, okay, there's a job in Ireland. Do you want the job? Yes, I want the job. So it was as simple as that. But even in that simplicity, there's so much that's unraveled along the way. And, what looks like a job can end up being a whole transformation of your character, of just different things that have come up for me as a person in my spiritual life, personal life, work life. So just one yes has changed a lot of things for me. So I would say growing up, actually I grew up in Zimbabwe, right? So I know it's always like, I grew up in the trenches and all my life I had to fight, but I wouldn't say I had a tough upbringing in that sense. There were challenges for sure. And one thing I can say is my parents definitely made a lot of sacrifices. It's not that they had truckloads of money or anything, but they did make sacrifices to just have us go to good schools and push our education as far as we could. So life was okay. Obviously, there were challenges in Zimbabwe, which, it's one of those things where we grew up where there was a time, obviously, when things were okay, and then it progressively got worse. There wouldn't be food in the shops and that kind of thing. So there were definitely, you definitely saw two sides of life, one of abundance and one of lack. And so with that, I then moved to South Africa for my college. And that was also a part of life that really shaped me because I was at that stage in life where I can make decisions for myself. Parents are home and I get to kind of live my best life. But it was it was a transition where I was coming into myself, really learning how to make my own choices. And I spent a good part of my life there as well. So it's all this movement. You born in one place and then it shapes you to a certain degree, which for sure I have deep connections to my home country. And then at the same time, I lived in another country for a long time where some of those experiences shaped me. I know even in episode 1, I heard myself saying right, like very Cape Townian way, in a very Cape Townian way. So definitely those little influences have trickled in. And following that, I obviously had completed my studies and then came to Ireland, which I was pretty much back and forth for about 3 years, I'd say. And then finally made the move in finally made the move to just relocate the whole family and just start our life up here in Ireland. So yeah, it's been a journey. Looking back on the first year here, it was pretty challenging, I have to say. I had a young baby, and just obviously trying to start from scratch. What do I need to do to get set up? Find a creche, get back to work as well. And there was just so many different points when I thought, oh my gosh, I need to go back to South Africa. Or at least I don't know how to continue, because it was just a bit of a shock where, it's starting from scratch. We didn't have a car. So it was walking around everywhere with a buggy. And I remember when I had to go back to work, my daughter wouldn't take formula, right? So I'd have to feed her in the morning and then feed her at the end of the day. And then, it was quite tough, to be honest. And then, because I had to obviously go to work, I had to arrange for a minder. So the cost of the minder was literally taking up 75% of my salary. And sorry, when I say I'm talking about my husband and I, but I'm just speaking from my own personal reflection as such. So yeah, that was another logistical. How do we solve this? So I would have to tell the minder to finish up at 5:30, right? But then at the time when I finish work, she must be on her way to meet me in town because she lived in town. So that was convenient. So I'd meet her in town and then she'd give me the baby. I'd go up into St. Stephen's Green in the food court, breastfeed the baby, and then head home. So that was quite a marathon. And when I look back, it really just helps me to understand and to reflect on the goodness of God, because it's not the worst story in the world, but it's good to kind of think of where you were and where you are now, because some of those are some of the prayers that you've prayed that you've forgotten that I used to pray for a car and I have a car now. So there was just those challenges of and even that everyday, where you say the everyday life of you need the minders, but the cost is so high. So what do? Do you stop working, or do you, there's always that challenge. And that was the first year. And also, even when I'd leave work, right, I'd have to leave very quickly so that I can make it to the creche on time. And I always think about how full the Lewis would get. I think in Japan, they have these professional pushers. So I think we need these professional pushers in Ireland so we can all squeeze in the Lewis and go home and get our kids in the creche. But that was some years ago. I haven't, obviously, I've moved on from that. My daughter's not in creche. So it was quite an adjustment. I remember walking home and having that hello darkness, my old friend feeling, just feeling so sorry for myself. And even then, like, people would actually just look at you like I'd be walking down the road and then there'd be these cars obviously driving or in the traffic, and literally everyone's just looking at you. I don't know if it looked like a bizarre scenario, like a woman carrying laptop bags and a baby and walking. But yes, that was part of my journey in the first year at least. And I came out stronger and have a lot to be thankful for. So with that, I think that was part of, the first few years, and just looking back and reflecting on even episode 1, right, and connection. And I think we'd spoken about connection with Anne and how it's difficult to sort of establish your roots in a new place and find your tribe or find the people to connect with. And over time I am building the community, but it's definitely a challenge to just find your place or find where you fit in and just start over again. It's really starting the process again. Where do I, how do I identify myself, and where do I belong in this fabric? And what experiences do I have in common? Because it is likely that we have common experiences, but it just seems that maybe sometimes we look at the differences rather than the things that actually bring us together. And the other thing on reflection is just the dynamics, really, of when you're in a relationship or in a marriage, and I don't know, maybe it's first world problems, or I'm just making a general statement, but it's the dynamics where, you know, you have to actually be such a team with, let's say, your partner, especially for us, because we wouldn't have family around. So it's just me and my family, and literally divide the duties, who's doing this, who's doing that. So it almost starts feeling like a trade exchange. So you get into that trap of, you know, just allocating duties between a husband and a wife. And sometimes it is tough to look beyond that and actually remember that you're friends, you're partners, and you have to keep that flame burning. Do other things besides minding the child, or like, you know, I'll trade you, you do bedtime, I'll trade you this, and that kind of thing. So it's easy to fall in that roommate trap, I'd say. But I'd say by the grace of God, you know, we are coming into our own and understanding each other and understanding the environment we're in as well and what it requires of us. So yeah, that is part of my journey, and just the little bumps in the road weren't major, but I can definitely say there was help along the way. It was never that I had to go through things alone. So I appreciate my circle and everyone around me who's been there to support me, and even strangers as well who've just been so kind. So yeah. So I want to also touch on the spiritual side of things when you move places, right? I think, yeah, I'm definitely speaking from my own personal reflections. So I think one thing that does happen when you actually move, or I suppose you guys can engage me in the comments, or send me DMs or whatever it is with your own experiences. But from what I experienced, it was that I know in the previous episode I mentioned the coffee story, right? When I drank Anne's coffee by mistake. But on the surface, it looks like just drinking coffee. It happens, and it can be like that. But there's another time when you can look at it and say, that could have been like very embarrassing for me, or if she had been someone who's not understanding, or, you know, just a mean-spirited person, she wouldn't have taken that very well or been very annoyed by me, right? And sometimes it's like there's different things that you can carry with you even though you've left a place. So it's like, I left Zimbabwe, I left South Africa, but this thing where maybe I'm very clumsy, or I just tend to embarrass myself in places, is actually just following me around. It didn't go through immigration. It didn't get the TSA approval or anything like that. And yeah, it's part of that baggage that, you know, we carry as humans, where actually you do collect it when you're getting your baggage, and you just probably don't realize that it's not just clothes that you're bringing or memories. It's also some of those things where it would seem like you drank coffee, but it's this thing that haunts you a little bit, where, you know, you might find that you get embarrassed in certain situations, or, you know, something happens where you might find that maybe in Ireland you were lonely or possibly depressed, and then you move to the USA, and, you know, that same thing is haunting you there. It's not like you left it in Ireland. It's actually something you'll go through as well there. So I think it's important to let go of these baggages, because they do follow you. It's not like, you know, it's concentrated to one place. It's some of those things where once you start something new, or go on a new journey, I'd say, let go of the old baggage or those old garments that you're wearing that don't suit the person who you are today, right? Whatever doesn't service your character today, you need to let it go. Or whatever garments, not to say torn, but, if, I think in the word it says, you can't put in the new, I think it's to do with the new wineskin. I'll check again exactly what it says, but it's basically you can't put in old things into a new sort of character. So in that, I think that's where I lean back to my identity and how the journey in Ireland has really transformed me into knowing who I am and not accepting something that doesn't go with the character that God has worked on in me, right? So whatever the old things, that embarrassment that I used to always feel, or I probably still feel it, but I need to at least be aware of it and shake it off when it comes, because that is part of those things where, if when God is doing something new in your life, that old character won't be able to service those new things. So, it's part of also that transformation that I've had here, and how I'm learning to embrace the new me as well. It's not it's not a new me like in that hyped version, but it's a new me that's actually pruned and processed, because you kind of have to break down all those old ideas of yourself and old conceptions that, just because I was raised like this and born like this, of course I can take the good things, but I don't have to take everything. I need to understand what God says about me, which in Ephesians 2 verse 10, it says, "You are a masterpiece created to do good works." I've paraphrased it, but as a masterpiece, then I carry that with me to know that when I go into a place, I stand firm and understand who I am and who God has made me to be. I don't go through the, what people define me as, or look for validation from people, because that was another area where I struggled, and it was challenging, because you have your qualification from, I had qualified in South Africa, right? And then you come to Ireland, and obviously there's a different way of doing things, and people say you might send an email. That means you have to send an email. So there's just these little intricacies in the workplace as well, where you have to learn and adapt to the way of doing things here. And sometimes it makes you look incompetent, but that's not incompetence as such. It's just a different way of doing things. But then if you look to be validated by the way, society might define your success or your performance, then you will always fall short. Whereas I believe God validates you in the way He has created you as a masterpiece to do good things. So, I think it is, it's a lot to kind of digest and talk about. And hopefully there'll be different topics that'll come out of here that I will try and touch on in future podcasts.